Improvisation is the process of devising a solution to a requirement by making do, despite absence of resources that might be expected to produce a solution. In a technical context, this can mean adapting a device for some use other than that which it was designed for, or building a device from unusual components in an ad hoc fashion. Improvisation in the context of performing arts is spontaneous performance without specific preparation. The skills of improvisation can apply to many different faculties, across all artistic, scientific, physical, cognitive, academic, and non-academic disciplines. Musical improvisation is usually defined as the composition of music while simultaneously singing or playing an instrument. Improvisational comedy is a theatre art performed throughout the world and has had on-again, off-again status throughout history. Dance improvisation is a choreographic tool. Improvisation was originally rarely used on dramatic television. A major exception was the situation comedy Mork and Mindy, where star Robin Williams, famed for this kind of performing, was allotted specific sections in each episode where he was allowed to perform freely. Improvisation also exists outside the arts. Improvisation in engineering is to solve a problem with the tools and materials immediately at hand. Improvised weapons are often used by guerrillas, insurgents and criminals. Engineering. Improvisation in engineering is to solve a problem with the tools and materials immediately at hand. Examples of such improvisation was the re-engineering of carbon dioxide scrubbers with the materials on hand during the Apollo 13 space mission, or the use of a knife in place of a screwdriver to turn a screw. Engineering improvisations may be needed because of emergencies, embargo, obsolescence of a product and the loss of manufacturer support, or just a lack of funding appropriate for a better solution. Users of motor vehicles in parts of Africa develop improvised solutions where it is not feasible to obtain manufacturer-approved spare parts. The popular television program MacGyver used as its gimmick a hero who could solve almost any problem with jury-rigged devices from everyday materials, a Swiss Army knife and some duct tape. Performing arts. Improvisation can be thought of as an on-the-spot, or off-the-cuff spontaneous moment of sudden inventiveness that can just come to mind, body and spirit as an inspiration. No preparation or training is needed. However, improvisation in any life or art form can occur more often if it is practiced as a way of encouraging creative behavior. That practice includes learning to use one's intuition, as well as learning a technical understanding of the necessary skills and concerns within the domain in which one is improvising. This can be when an individual or group is acting, dancing, singing, playing musical instruments, talking, creating artworks, problem-solving, or reacting in the moment and in response to the stimulus of one's immediate environment and inner feelings. This can result in the invention of new thought patterns, new practices, new structures or symbols, and/or new ways to act. Skills and techniques. The skills of improvisation can apply to many different abilities or forms of communication and expression across all artistic, scientific, physical, cognitive, academic, and non-academic disciplines. For example, improvisation can make a significant contribution in music, dance, cooking, presenting a speech, sales, personal or romantic relationships, sports, flower arranging, martial arts, psychotherapy, and much more. Techniques of improvisation are widely used in training for performing arts or entertainment. For example, music, theatre and dance. To extemporize, or ad-lib is basically the same as improvising. Colloquial terms such as let's play it by the ear, take it as it comes, and make it up as we go along are all used to describe improvisation. The simple act of speaking requires a good deal of improvisation because the mind is addressing its own thought and creating its unrehearsed delivery in words, sounds and gestures, forming unpredictable statements that feed back into the thought process, creating an enriched process that is not unlike instantaneous composition, with a given set or repertoire of elements. Where the improvisation is intended to solve a problem on a temporary basis, the proper solution being unavailable at the time, it may be known as a stopgap. This applies to the field of engineering. Another improvisational, group problem-solving technique being used in organizations of all kinds is brainstorming, in which any and all ideas that a group member may have are permitted and encouraged to be expressed, regardless of actual practicality. As in all improvisation, the process of brainstorming opens up the minds of the people involved to new, unexpected and possibly useful ideas. The colloquial term for this is thinking outside the box. Music. Improvisation is usually defined as the composition of music while simultaneously singing or playing an instrument. In other words, the art of improvisation can be understood as composing music on the fly. Improvisation can take place as a solo performance, or interdependently in ensemble with other players. When done well, it often elicits gratifying emotional responses from the audience. One notable improvisational pianist is Franz Liszt. The origins of Liszt's improvisation in an earlier tradition of playing variations on a theme were mastered and epitomized by Johann Sebastian Bach, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and Ludwig van Beethoven. Notable improvisational musicians from the modern era include Keith Jarrett, an improvisational jazz pianist and multi-instrumentalist who has performed many completely improvised concerts all over the world. W. A. Matthew, also known as William Alden Matthew, was the musical director for the Second City in Chicago, the first ongoing improvisational theater troupe in the United States, and later was musical director for another improv theater, The Committee, an offshoot of the Second City in San Francisco. Derek Bailey, an improvisational guitarist, Stephen Nachmanovich, an improvisational violinist, and Eugene Friesen, an improvisational cellist. Improvised freestyle rap is commonly practiced as a part of rappers' creative processes, as a finished product for release on recordings, as a spiritual event, as a means of verbal combat in battle rap, and, simply, for fun. It often incorporates insults similar to those in the African American game The Dozens, and complex rhythmic and sometimes melodic forms comparable to those heard in jazz improvisation. In the realm of silent film music, there are also a small number of musicians whose work has been recognized as exceptional by critics, scholars and audiences alike. These include Neil Brand and John Sweeney, among others, who were all performers at La Gionate del Cinema Muto, the annual conference on silent film in Pordenone, Italy. Their performances must match the style and pacing of those films which they accompany, and the knowledge of a wide range of musical styles is required, as well as the stamina to play for films which occasionally run more than 3 hours in length, without a pause. Theatre equals comedy equals. Improvisational comedy is a theatre art performed throughout the world and has had on-again, off-again status throughout history. Some of the more famous improv theatres and training centers in the world include I.O. in Chicago and Los Angeles, the Second City in Chicago and Toronto, the Players Workshop in Chicago, National Comedy Theatre in San Diego, New York and Phoenix, Upright Citizens Brigade, the People's Improv Theatre, the Magnet Theatre, the Groundlings, BATS Improv in San Francisco, Wing It Productions in Seattle, Philly Improv Theatre in Philadelphia, Brave New Workshop in Minneapolis, Comedy Spores in Milwaukee, and Theatre Sports in Calgary, Canada. There are also many well-known university improv teams, including Theatre Strike Force at the University of Florida, Gigglepants at the University of Texas at Austin, and Erasable Incorporated at the University of Maryland. Improvisation found a home at universities. The origins of the Second City was the Compass Players, an offshoot of theatre programs at the University of Chicago in the 50s. Later, once improv had been established as an art form, improv groups sprung up on college campuses, starting in the 80s, where crowds were easy to find and teams could perform frequently. Now an improv group is a common staple of college extracurricular activities. Notable pioneers in the field of improvisation, comedic or otherwise, include Mike Myers, Neil Malecki, Paul Merton, Stephen Ferry, John Sessions, Josie Lawrence, Viola Spolin, Paul Sills, David Shepard, Del Close, Josephine Forsberg, Gary Austin, Martin DeMart, and Keith Johnston. Notable performers include Paul Merton, Stephen Colbert, Steve Carroll, Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, Robert Townsend, Colin Mochrie, Ryan Stiles, Ross Noble, Eddie Izzard, Tony Slattery, Mike McShane, Sandy Toksvik, Wayne Brady, Jonathan Winters, T.J. Jagodowski, Robin Williams, and David Pasksy. Dance improvisation as a choreographic tool. Improvisation is used as a choreographic tool in dance composition. Experimenting with the concepts of shape, space, time, and energy while moving without inhibition or cognitive thinking can create unique and innovative movement designs, spatial configuration, dynamics, and unpredictable rhythms. Improvisation without inhibition allows the choreographer to connect to their deepest creative self, which in turn clears the way for pure invention. Contact improvisation, a form developed in 1973, that is now practiced around the world. Contact improvisation originated from the movement studies of Steve Paxton in the 1970s and developed through the continued exploration of the Judson dance theater. It is a dance form based on weight sharing, partnering, playing with weight, exploring negative space and unpredictable outcomes. Sculpture. Sculpture often relies on the enlargement of a small model or maquette to create the final work in a chosen material. Where the material is plastic such as clay, a working structure or armature often needs to be built to allow the predetermined design to be realized. Alan Thornhill's method for working with clay abandons the maquette, seeing it as ultimately deadening to creativity. Without the restrictions of the armature, a clay matrix of elements allows that when recognizable forms start to emerge, they can be essentially disregarded by turning the work, allowing for infinite possibility and the chance for the unforeseen to emerge more powerfully at a later stage. Moving from adding and taking away to purely reductive working, the architectural considerations of turning the work are eased considerably, but continued removal of material through the rejection of forms deemed too obvious can mean one ends up with nothing. Former pupil John Edgar uses Thornhill's method as a creative extension to direct carving in stone and wood. Film. The director Mike Leigh uses lengthy improvisations developed over a period of weeks to build characters and storylines for his films. He starts with some sketch ideas of how he thinks things might develop but does not reveal all his intentions with the cast, who discover their fate and act out their responses as their destinies are gradually revealed, including significant aspects of their lives which will not subsequently be shown on screen. The final filming draws on dialogue and actions that have been recorded during the improvisation period. The film company ACT2CAM uses improvisation to create the characters, contexts and plot for their films. Improvisation also forms a large part of the final filmed product. Writing. Improvisational writing is an exercise that imposes limitations on a writer, such as a time limit, word limit, a specific topic, or rules on what can be written. This forces the writer to work within stream of consciousness and write without judgment of the work they produce. This technique is used for a variety of reasons, such as to bypass writer's block, improve creativity, strengthen one's writing instinct and enhance one's flexibility in writing. Some improvisational writing is collaborative, focusing on an almost Dadaist form of collaborative fiction. This can take a variety of forms, from as basic as passing a notebook around a circle of writers with each writing a sentence, to coded environments that focus on collaborative novel writing, like Other Space. Improvised weapons. Improvised weapons are often used by guerrillas, insurgents and criminals, as conventional weapons may be unavailable. Such weapons vary in sophistication from simple sharpened sticks, to petrol bombs and homemade napalm, to IEDs and makeshift bomber aircraft. Weapons are also improvised by regular military organizations and formations as stopgap measures when purpose-built equipment is either not on hand or is simply not yet available. Notes. References: Abbott, John 2009. Improvisation in Rehearsal. Nick Hone Books. ISBN 978-185459-523-2. Abbott, John 2007. The Improvisation Book. Nick Hone Books. ISBN 978-185459-961-2. Harrigan, Pat 2002. First Person, New Media as Story, Performance and Game. MIT Press. ISBN 978-0-262-23232-6. Johnston, Chris. 2006. The Improvisation Game, Discovering the Secrets of Spontaneous Performance. Nickone Books. ISBN 978-1-85459-668-0. Madsen, Patricia Ryan 2005. Improv Wisdom, Don't Prepare, Just Show Up. Bell Tower. ISBN 1-4000-8188-2. Nachmanovich, Stephen 1990. Free Play, Improvisation in Life and Art. Penguin Tarcher. ISBN 0-87477-578-7. ISBN 0-87477-631-7. External links, media related to improvisation at Wikimedia Commons, Improvisation at DMOZ, Critical Studies in Improvisation, Easy Piano Improvisation, Improvising Synesthesia, Comprovisation of Generative Graphics and Music by Joshua B. Mailman, in Leonardo Electronic Almanac v. 19, Number 3, Live Visuals, 2013, pages 352-84. Applied Improv Network, a Euro-annual global conference on using improv off stage, in business, education, and life.